Good morning, everybody. It's Erin Scott here. How are you doing? I'm recording this on Saturday, June 20th, and we have some things happening this weekend, big things, big alignments happening, as most of you have probably well heard and read, but I'm going to give you my take on this particular summer solstice point, new moon point, and annular solar eclipse point. So there's a lot happening this weekend. Let me put on my highlighter here. So what we have here is a photograph of this annular solar eclipse that we had in Mexico in 2012. So it shows this, what's called the Ring of Fire, and it essentially shows a pretty direct lineup of the moon in front of the sun, but with enough of the sun showing in the background to have this ring appear. So this is the eclipse that's going to be visible in certain parts of the world. If we look at where that is, I pulled up time and date here, okay? But you can see on this eclipse that we're going to be having on the 21st of June, Sunday, we have Southeast Europe, much of Asia, um, Northern Australia, a good portion of Africa, the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, and you could see the image there. So not all of us are going to be seeing this particular eclipse occur, but this is a global event. Is it that parts of the world that are more directly impacted are going to have more extreme energetic responses? Possibly. Sure, you know. But we're all going to be impacted by it because it's a global event. So this is what's going to be happening this weekend. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart so we can take a look at this, okay? Let me get this centered. Okay, so what we have is Sunday, June 21st at 2:41 Eastern Time. Now, this is the point of the new moon in Cancer at 0 degrees. It's at 2:39 a.m., 2 minutes before. That is the exact point of the solar eclipse. So this particular chart is for the exact time of our new moon, sun and moon conjuncting, as it does every month. But the potency of this particular conjunction cannot be denied. Number one, it's at a 0 degree point. Number two, it's at a 0 degree point in Cancer, which is the solstice point. This is a start of a new season. It's a cardinal sign. So this particular new moon is happening at the point that represents a new seasonal start, a new chapter of the story. So just in that understanding and that recognition, that's potent. And because it is at a cardinal point, we're talking we have either an equinox or a solstice. In this particular case, Cancer is in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice point, the winter solstice point in the southern hemisphere. But it's one of our two solstice points. It is going to be December 14th of 2020, in 6 months' time, where we're going to have another new moon total solar eclipse, a total solar eclipse. And that's happening in a mutable sign. It's happening at 23 degrees Sagittarius. So it's a very, very different energetic, everybody. The particulars of the potency of this new moon really speak to just what this symbolically represents. If we're talking about the sun and moon coming together, whatever degree it might be in whatever sign it might be, it is a monthly opportunity for alignment. It's kind of a natural energetic call to align the inner self with the outer self, with the particular qualities of the sign that it's in. In this particular case, the 0 point Cancer is a solstice point, and it does represent an alignment that represents a longer, larger, more profound chapter of your growth and evolutionary process in the next decades. So it's a bigger chunk of growth. When we're looking at the solstice, or excuse me, when we're looking at an eclipse point, we're kind of feeling into the energies playing out for the next 6 months. But what we're talking about again with this particular alignment, especially in Cancer, ruled by the moon, literally, this is a new seeding for the emotional self, the internal self. What is it that matters to you as an individual? And what is it that matters and has meaning for the collective? Because this is a collective event. So for you as an individual and for the collective, there's a new chapter of attending to the inner narrative, listening and feeling into what's true, what has meaning, what matters. Okay? In addition, Cancer kind of rules our emotional guidance system, our how we evoke and utilize our emotions, how we feel about things, and how we operate in that world. It also connects us to issues of the past, issues of the mother, the archetypal mother. So there's all kinds of new beginnings here as it relates to the mother archetype, as it relates to issues of the past, as it relates to our emotional foundations, as it relates to the utilization of the feminine functionality. Okay? This is the new seed, and it's a substantial chapter. Now, what about the eclipse? So the eclipse, the moon is going to be covering the sun here. The moon is at the new moon point in the sign ruled by the moon. So the potency of this eclipse is clear, really. With the moon covering the sun, there's almost a more profound and a more committed, I would say, commitment to listening to the inner voice, to doing the action on the external that is the representation of what is the real meaning for the collective and for you as an individual. So that eclipsing out of the sun speaks volumes to kind of the emphasis on listening and attending to the inner emotional world of you for this next swath of time, certainly for the next 6 months. But what I'm looking at here is kind of a bigger, chunky chapter of your growth and evolutionary process, going well beyond this eclipse portal. Okay. And there's kind of another thing here because this particular eclipse is happening at the summer solstice for a large portion of the world's population. This is a new seeding time for the externalized self. And because it's involving this attention to the inner world of the person, it speaks to the fact that we're going to start expressing our feminine quality sets in a more honoring, respectful, valued way. Okay? So just think about that. That's going to be part of the externalized expression. Okay, now you can see how tight, the reason why this eclipse is this annular eclipse is because the sun moon are essentially right on top of the nodal axis point. Now you can see that the nodes are still hanging out, you guys, at this 29-degree axis. Let me see. I need to remind myself, actually. Let's see what date that 29-degree axis breaks. Let's take a look. I'm looking at my ephemeris right now. The nodal axis, everybody, is going to be at that 29-degree point until July 8th. July 8th. So we're hanging on for the next couple of weeks after this point, where the 29 critical degree, the need to integrate and mature the mind, the need to integrate and mature the belief system, is really activated. And it's certainly activated for this particular signature for this solstice new moon eclipse. Okay. So 29-degree critical growth needed. And you can see that the karma asteroid is very close to this nodal point. The one thing that I'm going to point out to everybody, this is going to be very quick because I don't want to go into political dialogue, is that if we look at the POTUS, we can see that his sun is at 22 degrees Gemini. Of course, this particular individual has Uranus, North Node, and Sun conjunct. Okay, so 22-degree sun is being impacted by the point of karma. So we'll see. We'll see what plays out there. Okay, now with regards to the energetics of this particular new moon solstice eclipse, a new chapter of the externalized self, honoring, valuing, and expressing the internal meaning-making world for the individual and for the collective. And so what we have here is we still have this square activation. This sun and moon is still squaring the conjunction of Uranus and Mars. Or excuse me. Excuse me. That's interesting. Neptune and Mars. Why did I say Uranus? There is a sextile between Uranus and Mercury, which we'll talk about actually because of this grand minor trine. But the sun, moon, and the north node are all squaring, and karma, by the way, are all squaring this idealized action, and in some cases diluted action. In some cases, violence on behalf of some sort of inner spiritual deluded, self-deluded, confused association, confused interpretation of what God and Jesus is about. This is creating aggressive action on behalf of some. So the new moon, where people are really connecting into themselves at a greater level, is being conflicted and has a friction energetic, a friction relationship with this idealized action. Now, for some people, that's going to create impassioned movement, action, and voice, especially because we still have Venus in this third house in Gemini. We're looking here, by the way, everybody, at the archetypal chart here, 0 degrees Aries at the start. So what we're talking about here with Venus and, of course, the nodal axis point, the north node, still in Gemini. In fact, for the next 18 months, we're going to have this node moving through Gemini. But the point is that we've had Venus in Gemini for a while. Right now, it's still retrograde in Gemini. It's going to be there for a while longer. What our value system really is connected to now is speaking. It's about voicing what needs to be voiced. And of course, it's connected by trine up here to this kind of this new focused maturity that wants to occur with regards to the collective, what's happening with the humanitarian population globally. So there's a level of maturity, the value is speaking up. And so that's what's happening. But we do have this activation, and in some cases, you know, this kind of new aligned, emotionally connected self is going to be really moving in regards to idealized action. There's action needing to be taken, protests needing to happen, that is on behalf of the greater good, and how others are going to be activating this alignment is, especially, by the way, everybody, let me just say this. For those individuals out in the world who are in a conflict with, who deny or confuse, don't understand their past, their mother, their upbringing, their life story, if they don't understand what they are, who they are, why they are, what the patterns are, a lot of people have fear about their own emotionality. Many people do, because they don't understand it. They've been imbibed, like everybody has been imbibed into this, uh, the modern human person has been taught and indoctrinated, rather, into this, fear of the emotional world. The intuitive world is to be feared. It's the hyper focus on the analytic function of the human ways of knowing the world. There are many ways of knowing the world. Analysis is one of many. So the modern human vilifies the emotions, vilifies the feminine, you know? It's unpredictable, it can't be known, and so it can't be controlled, and so it's frightening. And of course, that's really not true, but that is the relationship to the inner self. Most people, their relationship to their inner self is very convoluted, very skewed, and very, very wounded, and very segmented because it's pushed into shadow. And so, those people that are really emotionally confused, unclear, and deeply, deeply, deeply wounded, and I've just had an experience with somebody yesterday with some deep wounds, not a client, somebody in the community. So this is going to create a lot of aggressive action that is based on some deluded ideal. God wants me to do this, or this is just the right thing to do. So for some, there's going to be aggressive action based on delusion and a denial of their emotional reality. And in other cases, this is going to be somebody connected in and really attending to what really has value to them. And that's going to create a level of pushing for the right action, the morally aligned action that needs to be taken in the world. And of course, these are all part of this T-square with the nodal axis. And indeed, the thing with the nodal axis T-square points is that, in the natal chart, this can be looked at as skipped steps here. And so if we're looking at the general humanitarian growth and evolutionary process about moving away from, um, what others speak and say and tell me the truth is, down into what I experience, know, and to open up to curious co communicating. This is about holding a belief about what's true. Here's about being curious and open and engaging with dialogue. And so this growth arc is connected to what is the action that you're taking? Is the action confused and deluded? Or is the action based on a real core connection, a true connection, an authentic connection to your own consciousness, to the own depth of your own mind? Okay. Trying to think if there's anything else to talk about. I mean, there's a couple of quincunxes here. When it comes to, in fact, let's talk about this one, because the 0-degree Saturn, everybody, up here, right now it's going retrograde. It's at 0 degrees Aquarius. It is exactly quincunxing the sun moon. That's a big deal, because what that indicates is that there's this dissonant relationship between the alignment of self, and indeed the new chapter of alignment to self, and indeed the new internal feminine quality sets of emergence that's coming out in the externalized person, the inner self being spoken in the external realm, the inner self coming out through the personality and the persona of the person. This is not relating well. The new birth of self is going to have some issue with this kind of traditional ways by which society or the collective operates. Keep in mind, Saturn at this early degree Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, is at a beginning stage here. It's like the maturity that wants to occur over the next couple of years with Saturn moving through Aquarius is at a beginning stage. And so it's almost like an infant in a way. There's an infantile or a beginning stage to the maturity being called. And of course, this is also the binding or the stay-at-home orders for the collective that we've seen put in place. That's also the alignment here. But the quincunx is to the new self that wants to emerge, that is going to emerge, is also quincunxing Pluto, Jupiter, Pallas Athena, in addition to Saturn. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that Pluto and the MC, this is an Eastern chart MC point, they're both exactly at 24 degrees. So there's something here about the transfer, and this is, of course, let's call it the Washington, D.C. U.S. chart. With regards to Washington, D.C., there's something about the goals of the, let's call it the government system, that is being transformed over the course of this next 6-month cycle, right? And for those of you outside of the U.S., we're going to be having our elections this fall. Possibly. There's probably going to be some interruption with that particular process, but anyway, this is a big deal because what this Pluto MC Eastern chart, Washington, D.C. chart indicates is that, yes, there is some transformation of the goal for what would be, let's say, the norm. What would normally occur might not be occurring. And this quincunx here, this looks like a battle of the social structures and the political structures that be. There's a difficult relationship to the emerging self, the new blossoming self. And this is a long-term beginning of the self. This is not temporary. This is like a new component of the individual, really attending to the truth of what really has internalized meaning. And so there's issue here. There's also, by the way, there's also just intrinsically an issue for the US government. And listen, I'm more specifically talking about the US government because I'm a US citizen. So listen, I'm sure there's plenty of analyses looking at the UK political processes activated now, and India, Brazil, areas in South America, all kinds of areas to look at here, right? Middle East. But for me, I'm focusing on the US because it is a hot point for many things coming to light, and retribution and dynamic equilibrium and balance is calling for many things here. Many different levels of the system that's been based on hierarchy, dominance, cruelty, aggression, control, you know. So the point is that the government itself is going to have issue with the emerging human, and they're also going to have issue with everybody, their past, the past of its own country, right? So this is going to be very interesting because they will grip to the power that they have. They'll attempt to keep it intact. It's not going to be easy. especially with all of this compassion here. So the compassion asteroid at 28 degrees in Libra, Libra 7th in this archetypal chart, there's a square to the compassion emerging within people, within humanity, within the relationships and the dynamics of the relationships that we each have with each other. But there's this compassion stuff that is squaring the transformations and really the collapse of the truths that the government systems have been attempting to keep private, and the difficulty with the past that is emerging and coming forward. You know what I mean? Oh God. And then the new emerging self is trining this compassion. So this kind of new self is really about kind of almost an inherent understanding that we're here to relate to each other. We're part of a holistic system by our nature. And so compassion for each other versus competition with each other is the evolved way. It is what nature has learned over millions of years. Cooperative ecosystems, everybody, is the evolved way. Competition is antiquated. And it's false. It's not even based on natural systems. I mean, there's so much I could say about it. This whole paradigm is crumbling because it's not natural. It's unnatural. Or it's part of a natural system, but it's antiquated, it's old, it's heavy, it's toxified, it's skewed, it's imbalanced. It's just not correct. It's not aligned. And it's certainly not evolved with the upcoming paradigm of humanity. The other thing, by the way, that's going to be activated with this compassion squaring, the shattering, and the changes and the transformations, and the new emergent manifestations that are coming forward through government collapses, financial system changes, all these kind of things that are going to be activated now and through the next several years, is that it is going to be challenging for some people to feel into a level of compassion. Right? Some people are going to feel resentful about what's happening, confused about what's happening. There's a level of entitlement or whatever kind of stuff starts to emerge for you. You have a particular blueprint, and you, as an individual person, are meeting these times in a very, very distinct way. It's very specific to you. For those interested in receiving your natal chart in-depth analysis, you can see all of my links below, including my service page. Okay, but the point is that this particular square is going to be creating for some people issues with activating their own compassion. Okay, and by the way, that's also indicated because of the quincunx down here to Sedna. So as people are tuning into values, not trusting their own Taurus second house value, not trusting their own worth, not trusting what they manifest is even doable. Can I even manifest the life that I need, that I want? Can I manifest, the money that I need to live and survive and thrive and have abundance in my life? There is a lack of trust that the individual can do what's needed. And this is quincunxing the compassion for others. This can create issues if the person, if the individual is not trusting their own worth and value, if they're not trusting that money's going to be there, then it's going to, for some people, really activate a lack of compassion for others. Okay? And that's also, by the way, connected over here, because this sextile of compassion is here with Lilith, South Node, the old pattern of belief system that says I'm weak, I'm not powerful, that God is the powerful entity, and the government, the father, the patriarchy, those are the ones in power. Those are the ones in control. I, on the other hand, believe that I am weak and devalued. Lilith, I am devalued. I believe that I am not valuable. And so that belief in non-value is not relating well to the issues that are coming up with a transmutation of the career. For all of the folks that are out of work from the whatever, the restaurants and the different companies, many companies at many different strata in society, many people have been laid off because the businesses have closed. This is a big deal. However, it is what's happening, it is aligned, and I promise that most of you that have lost your jobs didn't necessarily love your jobs. And this is an appropriate and very aligned time. It's a very appropriate and perfectly aligned time. It's an accurate time for the reassessment of the work, the reassessment of what you love. That's part of this new moon here. Part of the new moon activation is really connecting into what you really love, what really has emotional resonance for you. Guaranteed that a large portion, a very large portion of the people who have been laid off didn't love their jobs at all. So use this time because this is redirecting you. The natural holistic process of the collective evolution is altering, it's forcing a redirect of your work, of your skill set, of your mastery, of your juice, of your bliss. So for those that can trust what's happening, their own value, their own worth, and the fact that money can be gleaned in other ethical and aligned ways, then that yod is potent because this creates a yod. So the yod is indicating what is, in fact, over this next 6 months, everybody, part of what will be experienced by the collective and in turn by individuals. This is the outlet, the release valve for the tension that's created between Sedna compassion and Sedna old patterns of belief. This is the release valve. And what is the release valve? To trust in your own value, to love and honor yourself and what you really love. What is your natural ethos? What is your natural ethic? That's the work. For all of us, for each of us, and for the collective, that's the work. Now, let's take a look at what the symbology is here, everybody. Let's pull up the symbology for this 0 degree. In fact, let me pull this over so you can actually see it while I'm reading it. Okay, so if we're looking at that 0 to 1 degree Cancer, I want you to look up here. I'm going to read it from the book, though, because it's a little bit skewed on the image. So this is the symbology that lives at this 0 to 1 degree Cancer point, everybody. A furled and an unfurled flag displayed from a vessel. This is a vessel of the extremes to which an individual will go in the practical allegiances with which he meets the various situations in life, and of his or her capacity to compromise or reverse any stand he or she may take whenever this suits ultimate ends. Here is his or her flexible determination to further every ambition, and his or her consistent preparation for every eventuality that might be anticipated. He or she is unhappy except as he or she somehow can feel themselves safely a step ahead. The key word is adaptability. When positive, the degree is a gift for highly profitable adjustment in every developing relationship with others. And when negative, vacillation, if not complete instability. I'm going to repeat that last part. The key word is adaptability. When positive, the degree is a gift for highly profitable adjustment in every developing relationship with others. And when negative, vacillation, if not complete instability. Now you can see by the positive and the negative expressions of this particular energetic, you can see how that could indeed play out here, right? Easy, especially with what we just talked about here, with this sun moon squaring these points and opposing the old patterns of belief. This is like the rigid truths that the established power players hold, but it's also the established beliefs of the weakened individual that most of the masses hold. Most people hold a belief that they are weak. Most people hold a belief that there is hierarchy in the living situation of being human on the planet. There is, but there's not. We have it, but is it true? Is it truthful? Is it correct? Right? Is it accurate? Is it really the evolved human experience to live in extreme hierarchy? Right now, and what we've been experiencing, what, for the last 30 years, is that the middle class in the US has been evaporating. So now there's the extreme wealthy, and then there's the growing population of the poor. That's what's happening. So the extremity is to such a degree, it's so toxic now that it has no choice, everybody, but to collapse. Nature does rebalance naturally. This is part of a natural evolutionary process. I want all of you to understand, because I think some people that are going through this process are really struggling with what's happening, questioning it. It might feel random, it might feel devastating because there's people dying. This is a massive revolutionary process of shift and change and reorientation. It is dramatic and there's a lot going on, but it's also correct. There's correctness to the recalibration that's taking place and the collapses taking place. Let the collapses happen with joy. Number one, nature's calling it. It's needed. It was all built and predicated. The foundation of the structure of the human reality has been built upon imbalances. And now it can't hold anymore. So let it collapse. But if we're talking about this particular alignment here, there's something about, I want to see if I can see something that I read earlier in this paragraph. Let me pull this down. Yeah, this is a symbol of the extremes to which an individual will go in the allegiances of the various situations of life. There will be extremes, This is about adapting and going with the flow of the natural process of evolution. But there will be extremes that play out. So is it going to be efficient adaptability to the changes taking place? And is it going to be based out of connecting into what the root of your inner self speaks? What is the core? What's your own moral ethic here? Your own internal resonance. It's about going with that flow of the truth of what's within. So, are you going to be adaptable and efficient in moving with that flow of the internal self and what's calling? Or is it going to be this kind of vacillation or moving into complete instability? Because for some people, this is going to look like emotional instability, especially with this activation. Total emotional denial, total lack of understanding of their own storyline, projection outward about aggressive, idealized action based on delusions of mythic devaluation. Or is it going to be complete self-alignment to idealized action in the world and to address the old mythic ideas of self, belief of self, belief of the world, belief of life, belief how things are to be run. Well, if you're moving with the evolutionary flow, that will be released. And this will be the growth edge. And you will move in with the karmic processes playing out. Gemini karma, information coming to light that needs to come to light, things being spoken that need to be spoken, conversations happening that need to happen, the mind processing information that needs to happen. There's a mental karmic process that's happening now too, right? I also wanted to just point you to the polar opposite point. Even though the sun and moon are both at that 0 to 1 degree Cancer point, I also just wanted to show you this particular opposition point, which is essentially very close to that South Node Lilith. And this is an Indian chief demanding recognition. This is a symbol of the extreme fidelity of the normal individual to the everyday or accepted values of life, and of his uncompromising inner integrity when it comes to meeting any situation of the moment. Here is his determination to maintain every advantage gained by birth or through experience, and to grasp every opportunity for genuine self-expression. He is unhappy except as he can feel secure in the place he has made for himself. The key word is inflexibility. When positive, the degree is ever effective authority, following from a single eye of vision and a consistent dignity of character. And when negative, idle pompousness and a senseless raising of minor issues. Feel into that. It's completely accurate. It's completely tied in to what's happening. Okay, everybody? I think I'm going to leave it there. For those interested in, actually, an announcement. Today, on the 20th, in fact, probably by the time this video loads, the monthly special for the Gemini solar return readings, analyses, are going to be going away. So I'm going to change that at about 5 o'clock Eastern time today. And I am going to change the solar return analysis special to Cancer. So for those of you listening to this and are interested in a cost-effective analysis from me, you can look at the service page down toward the bottom of the page, elscott.org/services. And down at the bottom, you're going to see a $59 special for the Cancer solar return analysis, which again will be activated today at about 5 o'clock Eastern. Okay, so and just to confirm with you, because I didn't actually state it, indeed today, June 20th, is when our sun enters Cancer, and it's happening at 5 p.m. 44 minutes Eastern, 5:44 Eastern. So it is the official beginning of our summer solstice. And again, after this 5:44 solstice point, just a handful of hours later is when we have this solstice new moon solar eclipse. Very tightly conjuncted here. Okay, everybody, I send you much love and support for your processes, for your growth, for your ease, for your understandings, for your clarity. For those interested, I really do recommend the natal analysis. You need to understand your story. Everybody needs to understand who they are, like why they're here and what the patterns are about and what the growth arcs are. Like, what is it, you know? Okay, everybody, much love to you. Happy solstice. Bye-bye.